All right, looks like we're live. I'm here with my frequent sidekick, Artistic Layman.
How do you do, fellow kids?
So, folks, if you don't know, there's a few comic news sites out there. One is called newsarama.com. It's pretty decent. There's boundingintocomics.com, which is it's kind of like more right-leaning, I guess, or more apolitical or less PC, whatever you want to call it. There's a few others, and then the other big one, the biggest one outside of Newsarama is Comic Book Resources at cbr.com. Comic Book Resources is, I believe, run by the ghost of Karl Marx. It is disgustingly left-wing, but what's more, it's also insanely incompetent. There's many times I catch just blatant mistakes or just articles that are incredibly stupid, and in that spirit, we're going to bring up an article from comicbookresources.com. The article is entitled, Why Stan Lee Has No Cameo in Spider-Man Far From Home. Well, that's a fucking mystery. We need to call Scooby and the gang on this one. Thank God the fine folks at cbr.com are here to explain to us the mystery of why Stan Lee is not appearing in a movie from Beyond the Grave. Let's we got to read this. We have to fucking read this. There are two things above all else that moviegoers have come to expect when watching any film about a Marvel character. There's an inclusion of a post-credit or mid-credit scene and the cameo by Stan Lee, who created many of the famous superheroes out there, including Spider-Man. Yet Spider-Man Far From Home, the conclusion of the Marvel Universe's Phase 3, lacks a cameo. Gee, I wonder why. Please enlighten us. It wasn't that the filmmakers never had a chance to film one, according to director John Watts in an interview with Cinema Blend. It was an active decision. I think everyone sort of knew he was sick, and he had just filmed the cameo for Endgame. I think they shot that earlier too, it's explained. It felt right for the last thing to be an Endgame, so we never really talked about it, honestly.
Jinkies, what a mystery.
You're right, Scoob. We're dealing with one sick son of a bitch.
Now I'm getting the impression they might have snubbed him. This is the sort of hard-hitting commentary we have from comicbookresources.com. Why Stan Lee has no cameo in Spider-Man Far From Home? Well, they probably would have had time, but they just didn't ask him. I hate this site so much. And there's another article I think we're going to bring up. If I can find it. Accidentally exited out, and now I don't fucking see it. Good God. Damn it. This site is so fucking poorly put together, too. Here we go. We have another article here we're going to take a look at. These articles are incredibly short because I don't even know if the people writing for the site get fucking paid. This site is so fucking amateur hour. Good God, at least Newsarama has its shit somewhat together. So, the article is entitled, Yes, the Not My Ariel backlash to the Little Mermaid casting is racist.
Ooh,
it's racist.
Shocking.
Oh, well, please. What do the Human Torch, MJ, and now Ariel from The Little Mermaid have in common? They're historically white characters who have been recast as people of color, and as a result, fans have acted badly. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the MJ in the new Spider-Man movies wasn't really Mary Jane. Remember she had a little bit of a different name or something? I thought, calm down, nerd. It's not the same character. You notice they fucking gaslight you with this shit? They either try to, oh, it's not a big deal. Why are you so upset about it? Or, oh, you're racist. You notice they keep changing the tactics. Remember when the Ghostbusters movie came out and they kept trying to be like, well, the original Ghostbusters wasn't even that good. Motherfucker, are you high? The original Ghostbusters is one of the finest movies ever fucking made. It's certainly one of the most beloved movies ever fucking made. I haven't met anybody who's met anybody who doesn't like the original Ghostbusters. It's perhaps the most, I've never known, like even hardcore evangelicals would be like, yeah, it was an okay movie. if they've seen it, if they're not one of the people who never fucking see movies. Like, oh, it wasn't that good. It was far better for us to remake it with 4 fucking lesbians. Here's the thing with the race casting. I'm not even going to read this because you already know what they're going to say. Okay? First of all, it is an epidemic to fucking do this to redhead ginger characters. All right? The West, the whole West family over in Flash, which isn't even a casting I inherently mind it, because the guy who plays in the Flash show, the guy who plays the father of the West family, who sort of was Barry Allen's surrogate father and all, I like that actor a lot. So I can't even complain too much about that casting. But, Iris West and Wally West were both redheads. Jimmy Olsen in the Supergirl show. MJ in the Spider-Man movies. Starfire, if you want to count that as a redhead, that is an orange-skinned alien. So that one's a little iffy. But Starfire in this trash fire of a new Titan show. Which, by the way, why, if they had cast a black actress, why didn't they keep the orange skin of the alien? But whatever. You see this constantly with redhead characters. Because let's be real, gingers are the most white people that ever whited. Okay, they're the rarest form of white people. I would argue the master race, the purest form of white people. And the other thing about it is, I'm not inherently opposed to race swapping. The worst thing about MJ in the new Spider-Man movies isn't even that it's race swapped. It's that actress is not particularly attractive. She's okay, but by movie fucking standards, no. And also, she is the character of MJ in Spider-Man Homecoming. I haven't seen Far From Home. I'm probably not going to see Far From Home. But the character of MJ in Spider-Man Homecoming is fucking obnoxious. Look, that woke girl Daria shit was kind of cute back in the late 90s. All right. That shit is well past old now. I can think of some race swapping I didn't care about, or I even liked. The guy playing Hemnil or whatever, the guy that runs the Rainbow Bridge in the Thor movies, I got no problem with that casting. No real problem with it at all. It's a minor character. It's a pretty good actor. So fine. Doesn't really bother me. The Kingpin back in the original Daredevil movie, I outright like that casting. Because aside from the race swapping, Michael Clark Duncan just embodied everything about, Wilson Fisk. That was actually pretty good. But remember, it's either okay or it's not to swap the race when adapting something to another medium. But anytime we're adapting an anime and we use white actors, everybody freaks the fuck out. Oh, you're whitewashing Asian characters. Even though half the motherfuckers in anime look white. I'm pretty sure are supposed to be white. I'm not sure why that is. I'm not a weeb. I couldn't tell you. But most of the characters I see in animes look white. Oh, no, you're whitewashing. Or, hell, they even got upset that they didn't make Iron Fist Asian, even though he's white in the comic. It was whitewashing to not get rid of a white character. It's obviously anti-white. It's particularly anti-redhead. That's why people are pissed off. It's not racist to notice patterns, much as they would love us to believe that. It's not hateful. It's not bigoted to just open your fucking eyes to the reality around you. And you know what? Lawrence Fishburne was another one where they swap. And you notice this: the race swapping only goes one way. It's only Lawrence Fishburne is Perry White in the new Superman movies. It's only get rid of white people, specifically redheads, but whites in general. Um, and I'm not opposed to. There's certain characters I think have enough of an iconic look that you should try to mimic that look when you're casting. I wouldn't want a blonde Superman or a redhead Superman for that instance. I wouldn't want a redhead Wonder Woman, much as I might want to jerk off to such an image. That's not what the character looks like. And there's no exact science to when I think it's okay to stray from the look of a character. But some of the more minor characters, I don't think it's a big deal. In fact, Jimmy Olsen in Supergirl. I'll tell you the real problem with that casting. Jimmy Olsen, aside from being a redhead dude, is a dork. Okay. Whereas the black guy they got playing him in the Supergirl show is this suave motherfucker. At least, like, say, Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. That's in the same spirit of the character of Perry White. You know, you couldn't get some Urkel-looking nerd to play Jimmy Olsen in the Supergirl show. So no, it's obviously anti-white. It's specifically anti-redhead. Yeah. I remember back in the I want to say it was the late 90s, could have been early 2000, could have been like as late as 2000, but I want to say it was 98. Maybe it was 97, but I want to say it was like 98. Disney did a live action version of Cinderella for TV, in which Cinderella was played by fucking Moesha, I want to say. What the hell was her name? Brandy. But it gets fucking goofier. The prince was an Asian dude. And the king and queen was a white dude and a black chick.
Whoopi Goldberg.
It was just bonkers. It was just fucking ridiculous.
There's a lot of adopting going on here.
Yeah, can you even be a prince if you're adopted? How does that work? Not sure the laws of this fictional monarchy that this story took place in. But yeah, it looked like a fucking high school play casting. And by the way, that came and went with almost no one fucking remembering it. I hadn't thought of it till someone brought it up as a meme making fun of the black Ariel thing. And you know what? This is going to be the end of Disney. This is probably going to be one of the worst performing of the Disney live action remakes. Maybe, I don't know. It's hard to predict, but I would say this would be the point where you've beat this trend to death, which should have been put to pasture a long time ago. But at least there's an attempt to capture the spirit and say the live action Aladdin. Some of the early onset photos, I thought everything strayed visually too much from it. But the more I look at commercials for it, the more I think maybe not. The live action Beauty and the Beast looked a lot like the Disney cartoon. But yeah, it's not racist to point out that specifically you're going against, it's anti-redhead. You want to talk about minority, okay? First of all, white people are a minority in the world at large, but redheads within white people are extreme minority. So No, it's not racist to point it out, or I don't even like that word because what the fuck does that even mean? It's not hateful to point it out. Okay. If you point out that this is an obviously bad casting choice for the little to play Ariel, that doesn't mean you hate fucking black people. I mean, the chat asks, "How far into Stranger Things are you?" I just finished Stranger Things 3. It's like, okay, so Stranger Things 3, the one character ends up being a lesbian. This one teenage character. I can't even say I was bothered by it. Like, I know some people, oh, it's just pause, whatever. The character is interesting. It was an interesting twist. Maybe it probably would have been far more satisfying to not have that twist and just have the two characters get together that seem to have this chemistry with each other. But I wasn't bothered by it. It definitely wasn't as good as where they should have gone with it. But the thing is, like, I'm not mad, oh, this character's a lesbian. I'm a little disappointed because they didn't take the story where they should have. It wasn't a satisfying conclusion to Steve's subplot. I don't want to get to a position where I'm like looking for things to be fucking mad about. You know what I mean?
That's my job.
Like, I'm not gonna be, oh, there's a lesbian in there. Like, I don't want to care about that shit. It's Stranger Things 3 is pretty good. It's not as good as the first season. It's better in the second. Second season just kind of felt forgettable. Like, not bad, but just meh. All in all, though, it's a pretty decent show. It's worth checking out.
It also looks pretty creepy.
Oh yeah. It was kind of cool. It was a bit of a zombie thing going on. It was possessing people, and then eventually it would make the people all combine into the fucking Cronenberg monster there. Here's a little article or a little excerpt from the CBR article. Objectively, the young singer / actress appears to be the perfect fit for Ariel. Objectively, which is exactly what director Rob Marshall said when describing the casting. After extensive search, it was abundantly clear that Holly possessed the rare combination of spirit, heart, youth, innocence, and substance, plus a glorious singing voice, all intrinsic qualities necessary to play this iconic role. Objectively. Oh, jeez. I mean, I'm not extremely fucking worked up. I don't have much of an emotional attachment to The Little Mermaid. It was a cute cartoon movie I saw as a kid. But the more I look at it as an adult, the more I'm like, well, this had kind of a fucked up message in it, as I said before.
The question remains, will she still be a spoiled brat?
Yeah, is she still going to be a self-absorbed cunt? Is that, I mean, that's the essence of Ariel, the character. A self-absorbed cunt who gets herself into a heap of trouble, and other people have to clean up that trouble, and she learns nothing and isn't even really all that grateful. Yeah. That is some delightful art that you're putting up there, though, Luke. I will say that.
White redheads, clearly superior.
Red gingers are the master race. I often will come on here and extol the aesthetic virtues of ginger women, but I will say ginger men are pretty goofy looking. There's no getting around that. There's no getting around that. Let's see. What else did I want to talk? Oh, the Epstein stuff. I guess we can talk about that a little bit. They apparently they got him on some really good stuff. Apparently they found excessive or something like that quantities of child porn or something at his house. He had a safe full of child porn put down on physical media, like on CDs, on fucking CD-ROMs and shit. He had a ton of the stuff, and I don't know. A lot of people are like, "Oh, Trump did." I don't know. I don't know how much Trump had to do with this. This could have been gears turning within. And you get a lot of the hucksters on the right that want to try. From what I heard, Cernovich is all like, "I helped move this along" or something. I don't know. I don't pay attention to Cernovich, but I heard somebody say he was trying to take credit. I don't know where it's going to go. I certainly hope it ends up being that justice is done. I'm a little skeptical.
Well, I mean, there is going to be tons of obfuscation considering the Democrat politicians he's contributed to.
And I will say this in Trump's defense. A lot of people are trying to be like, well, Trump's just as guilty. Trump knew Epstein. Yeah, all these people knew each other. Okay. But there's, as far as I know, no evidence that Trump wandered off to Epstein's fucking Lolita Island or something.
Bill Clinton did.
Yeah, Bill Clinton did. So I don't think Trump is heavily connected. I don't know. I could be wrong. Who the fuck knows, man? The world is run by satanic pedophiles. How deep that goes, who knows? But for whatever reason, this one got thrown under the bus. We'll see where that goes. I'm not going to sit here and QAnon, trust the plan. It's all falling into place. I mean, maybe who the fuck knows? Maybe this is really all the ninth dimensional Candyland. Just finally the big mousetrap is coming to an end here. But I don't know.
Well, imagine my shock.
Yeah. I mean, YouTube's terms and services won't allow me to say what should happen, but I believe you can all take a guess. What do we got going on in chat? Somebody says ginger men are nature's clowns. Yeah, you're not wrong. Michael Tone talking about Stranger Things. I was just disappointed she was a lesbian or bi. Well, all women are bi. I just get right down to it. Bisexual woman is just sort of a redundant term. Gives my dough to no hoe. Yes, indeed. Can we talk about HBO's Euphoria? I don't know anything about HBO's Euphoria. I don't watch HBO, so I couldn't tell you anything about HBO's Euphoria. I barely watch any TV. I mean, I might end up watching Spider-Verse on Netflix here soon. It's funny, dude. I don't know if Sony paid Netflix off or something. Every time I fired up the Netflix to start watching Stranger Things again, because I very rarely binge watch stuff. I watch a couple episodes and then I go do something else for a while. I'll watch a couple episodes. But every time I fired it back up, it used to be like, especially something like Stranger Things just came out. You know what I mean? But it used to be like, oh, you were watching this show? Do you want to keep watching this show? But no, every time I fired up the Netflix, it was like, you want to watch Spider-Verse, right? No, I'd like to finish watching the show I was watching. You sure you don't want to watch Spider-Verse? Like every fucking time I fired it up.
Same thing with me.
You surely you want to watch, and it didn't do that in the past. I remember watching the Castlevania thing. Like even if Castlevania wasn't the first thing up, I fire it up after watching like 2 episodes, come back, and it's like, you want to finish watching your show, right? Like, yes, Netflix, thank you. That is what I want. But yeah, they actually are making me start to, like I kind of like the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, I should watch that later. I got it for free here. But now I'm getting to the point where I want to not watch it out of spite. Speaking of Spider-Man, we were talking about the Spider-Man Homecoming movies, and obviously the actress playing MJ, she's just fucking trash fire. All right, she doesn't look like Mary Jane. She doesn't even look good, and the character she plays, who I don't know what the actress is like. She's probably terrible because everyone in Hollywood is, but the character is terrible. Okay, the character, you know. But that said, there's a lot of problems with the MCU Spider-Man. For one thing, he's far too much of now. Obviously, Stark's dead now, so I guess it won't be a problem. But he's far too much of a little puppy following Tony around. And he's like, stop taking your fucking mask off. Like, I'm looking at the trailers for this fucking new movie, and Mysterio shows up, and he's claiming I'm a superhero from another universe, and I've come to your universe to help because a bunch of your superheroes died. Well, that's obviously bullshit because he's Mysterio, right? So that's obviously some horse shit he's slinging around. And Spider-Man just takes his mask off. Well, I'm Peter. Nice to meet you. You fucking moron.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude. You have the right to remain silent.
I didn't mind it in Civil War because he was so fucking new. It seemed like he probably started being Spider-Man like a week before that movie. You know what I mean? He still had like a shitty costume and stuff. Like, I didn't mind it then. In comes Tony Stark, and he's like, I'll hook you up with his badass costume. All you gotta do is help me beat up Captain America. And he kind of falls in on it. You know what I mean? But even in the original Civil War story, people forget, like, in the comics, now obviously Spider-Man's an adult by this point, but in the comics, Spider-Man had cozied up to Tony Stark a lot after he joined the Avengers full time. Like, Tony Stark let Spider-Man and his family move into Stark Towers because their home had been destroyed by some supervillain who, I think Venom or something, or Norman Osborn, some shit. I don't remember off the top of my head. But he had kind of gone under Tony's wing a little bit. He just got the Iron Spider armor in the comic, and this was right before Civil War. So initially, he took Tony's side, and Tony even talked him into unmasking when all the superheroes fell under the initiative, like publicly or something. And partway through the Civil War story, he realizes, like, this ain't right. All right, this ain't right, and fucking turns on Tony. There wasn't any of that in the movie. Spider-Man was Tony's bitch the whole time. But okay, fine. You know what? He's young, whatever. But the one real problem in Homecoming, aside from the mystery meet MJ, was just how much of a puppy he followed Tony around like. And the other thing, again, and you see this in the Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, where he's like, I'm Peter Parker. I'm Doctor Strange. Oh, we're using our made-up names. Well, I'm Spider-Man. You should be using your made-up name in the first fucking place, you idiot. You don't know who this guy is. Tony doesn't even know him at that point. Well, hello, random person who is seemingly on my side right now. Let me give you my full fucking name. Why don't you give him your address and your social security number while you at it, dipshit?
I've never actually seen the new Marvel Universe of Spider-Man. Is Uncle Ben does come up, right?
I don't know that they've mentioned Uncle Ben by name once.
I mean, he's kind of a big point of his character, so I was kind of hoping they brought that around.
I know they did in Civil War, but they were just kind of introducing him, and they didn't want to dwell on him too much. I get that, but I don't believe they did in fucking Homecoming. If they did, it was like in passing, and I don't remember it. It's one of those things where I liked the MCU interpretation of Spider-Man in a lot of ways at first, but it clearly it's already starting to wear on me. For all the faults of the Raimi movies, they're vastly superior. But in all fairness, the taking the mask off thing happened a bit too much in the Raimi movies. There's a scene on the train in Spider-Man 2 when he takes his mask off because I guess his eyepiece was on fire or something. I didn't even get what the fuck was going on the first time I watched him. Like, why did he take his mask off again? Like, and part of that is because Hollywood, and they may still be this way, but I know that was pressure from the studio that we have to see him emote or people won't connect with him. So just constantly taking off the fucking mask. You saw that when they introduced Venom. For all the faults in Spider-Man 3, one of the things that annoyed me was Venom, when he finally, like the black costume in Spider-Man 3 looks like shit. Just a black and white version of the regular costume. Like, I don't know why they didn't just go with the black costume from the comics. That's a great costume design. You know, the big white spider with the simple black and all, and the little white spots on the back of the hands. That's a fantastic costume design. And you know, Venom looked okay because they basically did that plus the webbing, you know. But the biggest problem with Venom, visually at least, is like the symbiote in Spider-Man 3 kept moving away from his face. That's actually from the Venom movie, Luke. But the symbiote kept moving away from his face. And, you know, you saw Topher Grace, you know, because we have to have the actors emote to each other. You know, we can't just have the cool Venom fucking face with the big tongue and shit like that. But that's what everybody seeing this movie wants. And Spider-Man 3 also suffered from MJ is a bitch for no good fucking reason syndrome. But that's kind of, I've noted this before, for whatever reason, Hollywood, a lot of writers in just the entertainment industry in general can't seem to write a fucking stable relationship. You know, they have to break them up because drama. You know, a loving relationship seems beyond the capabilities of most people to fucking write these days. Dashing Rogue sends 199, says Digital Renegade Podcast will return Sunday 8 p.m. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, he kept doing that. And why is his teeth? Why does he have vampire teeth? Why did it give him vampire teeth?
Makes him look scarier, I guess.
I mean, like, I know, like, okay, the Venom has the mouth with the teeth, but that's just the symbiote doing it. What? God. But Spider-Man 3 definitely had its problems. I don't think Spider-Man 3 is nearly as bad as everyone says. I think it's actually kind of underrated because everyone wants to just shit on it righteously. And it definitely has a lot going for it. The guy from Wings who was playing the Sandman was fantastic in it. The visual effects on Sandman were great. Gwen Stacy, they shouldn't have put Gwen Stacy in there. She served no fucking purpose in that story. But yeah, Sandman was fantastic. Sandman was on point. And that scene where Sandman like puts himself together after he becomes Sandman, that is beautiful. Like that's practically you know, a short silent film in and of itself. And I know Raimi didn't want to do Venom at all because Raimi didn't like Venom. The reason Venom was in the third movie was, you know, back then they didn't plan ahead when making these movies that much. So, you know, they didn't take for granted that we were going to have sequels. So a lot of times, you know, the first movie is the biggest villain in this franchise. The second movie is the second biggest, and the third is the third, and so on and so on. Well, with Spider-Man, it's certainly at the time, Green Goblin was the biggest Spider-Man villain, the biggest deal, the most important Spider-Man villain. Doc Ock was second, Venom was third. That was pretty clear hierarchy, or you know, if you had to make a list of the most important Spider-Man villains, those would be the top three. You know, even if they're not your favorite, if you're just objective about it and say, well, who are the most important in this franchise, those would be the top three. Now, I realize doing a Venom story, you kind of have to have another villain in there because you kind of have to do the black costume. I think a better way to do it would have been to have Spider-Man, the black costume saga, as it were, be its own movie, and then Venom introduced right at the end, and that becomes Spider-Man 4. But it's not a bad movie. And frankly, at this point, I'll take it over Homecoming. As much as Michael Keaton's Vulture is fantastic in Homecoming, there's no getting around that. So he says, I hate the third movie's Goblin costume. You know, I forgot all about that. Harry Osborn. Can you even call that the Green Goblin? He looked like the fucking rocket racer or something. Like, he looked like he's extreme sports, fucking Tony Hawk Goblin. Yeah, that was pretty bad. A lot of problems with Spider-Man 3. But a lot of good things about it, too. It's definitely not as bad as everyone says. You know, it's not X-Men 3 bad or something like that. So my Eldritch fan in the chat says, it hit me right after your Movie Bob stream. Hell for Movie Bob would be him in a room with Captain and Space Jesus, praising him for eternity no matter what. How long till he realizes it's hell? Oh, it's sort of like the guy who gets everything you want. Yeah, like, yes, Movie Bob trapped in a room with someone that kisses his ass for all eternity. And you know, eons go by and eventually he realizes it's all bullshit. Movie Bob was playing four-dimensional chess with Captain N. Yes, indeed, he was. 4D chess into his house. But, you know, there's kind of, in the comics, I've noticed there's two extremes with Spider-Man's secret identity. There was times where writers would write him far too protective of his secret identity. Like, I don't think it ever made sense for him to keep it from Aunt May for so long, for example. In fact, Aunt May only ever got interesting during JMS's run when he had her find out that he was Spider-Man. She actually finally became interesting. And there's definitely like I was kind of, I remember after the unmasking, you know, buddy of mine talking like who should know, who shouldn't. It's like there's certain villains who should know just because it's a very personal conflict with them, like say Venom or Norman Osborn. There's certain other superheroes should know who, because Spider-Man is just so close to them, like the Fantastic Four or Daredevil, for example. There's other characters who should know just because their position or power would make it easy for them to find out, like Doctor Strange, for example, or Professor X. I mean, Professor X can just instantly know who anybody's secret identity is. Or somebody like Nick Fury, you know, the top spy guy in the whole world. Yeah, he'd probably be able to figure it out. You know, and like in the Ultimate comics, it made sense for him to tell Mary Jane because that was his best friend / love interest, and he ended up having to stand her up constantly, and all because of the thing. And yeah, he confided that in her, and it made perfect sense that he would. You know, there's an extreme, you know, there's a happy middle ground of reasonable between I can't tell anybody, and let me just take my fucking mask off every time somebody's remotely friendly around me. Likewise with Spider-Man being too much of a loner. I always thought for a long time Spider-Man was sort of stuck in his own corner of the Marvel universe a bit too much. Not friendly enough with other superheroes. And you could argue that maybe we fell into an opposite extreme after Bendis made him a full-time Avenger. Now, granted, I thought him being an Avenger was a great idea. I never bought many of the arguments against it. You know, they say like, oh, Spider-Man's a loner. Well, you know, Batman's a loner. He's in the Justice League. You know, Spider-Man's not powerful enough to be an Avenger. It's like, I would hear that sometimes and I'd be floored by that. First of all, Spider-Man's pretty powerful in and of himself. Yeah, he's not Hulk or Thor strong, but you know, he's you know, the guy could bench press 10 tons. And also, you know, he has a 3-story vertical leap. He's not powerless, but also like Hawkeye's in the Avengers. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, frankly, at this in this point in Marvel Comics, everybody's become an Avenger, so it almost doesn't matter. But yeah, Spider-Man, he was a reserve Avenger like back in the late 80s, early 90s, and made him a reserve Avenger. But yeah, making him a full-time one made perfect sense to me. Somebody says now that all the Avengers are either dead or in space, I guess in the MCU, Spider-Man is no longer has all these powerful friends. It can be the underdog again. It's kind of a shame they never really and I believe there's some licensing actual agreements to it, but they never have the Netflix characters and the movie characters interact, because Spider-Man and Daredevil had a fantastic friendship in the comics. Daredevil actually, in some story called The Sin Eater, he actually figured out Spider-Man's secret identity because Daredevil basically he can, his senses are so heightened, he can smell the difference between two people when they walk in. You know what I mean? He can hear the rhythm of their heartbeat and identify most people that way. So, his senses being that heightened, he was able to just figure out Spider-Man's identity. And when he told him that, Peter's all freaked out. He just kind of, as an olive branch, was like, "Oh, but I'm Matt Murdock, so now we're even, okay? Don't beat me up." One Netflix character was an Endgame, I think. I'm not sure about that, but maybe. But from what I understand, there's some, like, they can't just, like, now that the contract with Netflix is over, they can't actually do an additional season of a lot of those shows for a couple of years at another streaming service or on a TV channel or something. I mean, there's no reason, story-wise in universe that, Daredevil, or at least shouldn't, maybe Iron Fist or something, but at least Daredevil shouldn't have hopped through one of those portals in the big fight. The MCU needs the Kingpin. I mean, you got the Kingpin in the in the Daredevil show. What is that actor's name? The guy, he was Vincent something. He was in Full Metal Jacket. He was the guy that the Bug was wearing his skin in Men in Black. He was Detective Gorin in Law and Order: Criminal Intent. He's a great actor. Fantastic actor. Just one of the best parts of the Daredevil show. I still don't think I've seen season 3, to be honest. I've only watched season 1 and 2 of Daredevil. Season 1 is a masterpiece. Season 2 is okay. It's not bad by any stretch. I enjoyed it. Season 3, I've just never gotten around to seeing it. And I never watched any of the other ones. I haven't watched The Punisher or Luke Cage or Jessica Jones or Defenders even. Or Iron Fist, the other one. Somebody says Norman Osborn is the next big MCU baddie rumored. I mean, I guess, but I can't get into these Spider-Man movies anymore. The characterization of Peter is off. I don't care about his fat Filipino friend. I certainly don't give a shit about his love interest. Frankly, Michael Keaton's Vulture was the only truly fantastically interesting character in these movies. Michael Keaton's Vulture was great. Somebody says they're going to make Osborn into a Trump allegory, counting on it. I'm sure they will. But like I said, I don't care. I just don't care. Endgame was a good hopping off point, and that's basically going to be my hopping off point. I really don't think I'm going to follow it much more after that. Maybe one or two of the movies will really catch my interest. Like, I don't know, maybe the new Guardians of the Galaxy will look really good or something. But even that, after Endgame, I don't like how we sort of, reset the characterization of Gamora. I don't think that'll be that interesting. So yeah, I don't have a great like. If Sony comes out tomorrow and they're like, we're doing a Spider Girl or a Spider-Man 2099 animated movie, I'll be like, well, that sounds fucking fantastic. But beyond that, probably not all that interested anymore. Let's see how long we've been going on. About 45 minutes. I might wrap this up unless there's any callers or questions in the chat or something along those lines. Probably gonna wrap it up. Somebody says betting they have Gamora hook up with Adam Warlock like in the comics, and Star-Lord is going to have to let her go. Maybe. I'm not sure if they really are going to do a lot with Adam Warlock. I mean, they just sort of introduced it as an afterthought at the end of part 2, but we'll see if they actually go anywhere with it.
I mean, do you think this Mary Jane is actually going to have this kind of line?
Face it, Tiger. You just hit the jackpot.
No, she'll probably lecture you on how the founding fathers owned slaves or something like that.
Joy.
Love that. In fucking Homecoming, she's like, I don't want to see the Washington Monument because it was built by slaves. It's like, bitch. Yeah, I don't necessarily think it was, but bitch, most of the world was built by slaves. For about 99.9% of all of human history, most of the world was built by slaves. Be fucking thankful you're in that 0.01% of the entirety of human history right now. Be fucking thankful that all those white people you despise ended slavery. Somebody says, have you heard of The Boys? It's a comic series by Garth Ennis. I've heard of it. I never really read it, though. Yeah, I know they're doing a show based off of it. Like I said, I'm not really familiar with the source material. I mean, it's an interesting premise, but the problem is Garth Ennis just really, really hates superheroes, and just every one of his. Garth Ennis is a real one-trick pony when it comes to his writing. Garth Ennis is the kind of writer who you think is fucking brilliant when you first discover him. Usually, because when you first discover him, you're like 16 or 17. But it's this is great. And then, then you promptly realize it's just all the same shit with him. Like I remember his 12-issue, the first 12-issue run he did on Punisher. I remember picking that up as a trade when it had come to an end, and I read it all in like one evening, like in one sitting, basically. Like, this is fantastic. But it gets old after a while. It's the same shit over and over again.
Like specifically,
there's a lot of like shock shit in it, like especially back at the time, it was still sort of edgy to have really hard R-rated comics and all. So he would just, oh, look at this edgy shit. Look at all the shock stuff in it. There's a lot of God-hating fedora stuff. There's a lot of superheroes are stupid stuff throughout it.
And of course, the shock value was ramped up to 11 when he went on to Crossed.
Yeah, exactly. He's not a bad writer. He's written some stuff I actually like. He's written some mostly Punisher stuff that I actually like. But it's like, we get it, Garth. You don't like superheroes. That's fine. Good for you. His comic is constantly like Punisher handing some superheroes ass too, which gets annoying after a while. like it's kind of cool the first time you see it because it's like he was doing some planning and got the drop on a superhero or something. It's kind of cool the first time you see it, but after a while, it's like this is getting old.
Oh, our comments. Garth Ennis is the edgelord who still thinks he's in high school. Garth Ennis is Arini.
Well, no, Garth Ennis isn't quite as pompous as Arini. He doesn't pretend like he can speak Latin, but yeah, it gets so like the scene in Daredevil season 2 where the Punisher gets a drop on Daredevil, like he uses the high pitch sonics to disorient him, and then he ties him up and he's like, you have to kill me to stop me from killing this guy, kind of thing. That's taken directly at Garth Ennis's first 12-issue run of Punisher. And it was an interesting thing at the time. But then there's like another one where he's getting attacked by this super strong guy, and Spider-Man swings into the middle of it, like seeing an attack, a fight on a rooftop. Spider-Man gets knocked out, and Punisher basically uses Spider-Man as a human shield for a while before getting the drop on the bad guy. And when Spider-Man wakes up all beaten to shit, he goes like, "What happened?" And Punisher looks at him and goes, "We had a team up. You were great." Now that was kind of funny. I'm a Spider-Man fan and I laughed. But then there's like another time in Garth Ennis' run where like Wolverine shows up and he somehow gets the fucking drop on Wolverine. And it just keeps going with that over and over again. And then there was a time where it was like he wrote a story arc where towards the end of his run where Spider-Man, Wolverine, and Daredevil all team up to try and take down Frank, and he calls it the Confederacy of Dunces. And it's like, yeah, we get it, Garth. You don't like these other characters. WFJ Jacob B sends $2. Says, any characters you used to hate but now enjoy? I don't know. I don't really think so, to be honest. There's not many characters I've outright hated. Yeah, I really don't think so. There's very few truly bad characters. There's mostly just bad writing. Yeah, to be honest, I can't really think any. Eldritch Fan sends $2. Says, do you think Gamora would make a good villain in Guardians of the Galaxy? Probably not. Somebody else asked, did Garth Ennis write the new Castlevania, or is that Mark Miller? I assume you're talking about the animated thing. No, that was actually Warren Ellis. Characters I used to hate. I really can't think of any. Yeah, to be honest, I there's really no characters I just hate it, and then there's very few characters I outright hate. There's a lot of writers I outright hate. Right now, I'd say the only character where I'd be like, well, there's probably a couple. Like America Chavez in Marvel is one of these new SJW characters. The Dirk and Miss Marvel, another one I could do without. Yeah. Yeah, I can't really think of any characters I hated that I then kind of turned my opinion around on. Somebody says, for example, I never understood the Hulk until Ragnarok. Maybe just not hate, but just didn't appreciate it first. I can think of characters I was indifferent to, and then certain runs like made me appreciate them. Like Iron Fist, a good example. I didn't give a shit about. I'd seen him around a little bit, but I didn't give a shit about Iron Fist till the Heroes for Hire series that started in '97. That was really well done. So he says, never like Midnighter and Apollo, just one long gay Batman and Superman joke. If we're being perfectly honest, the entire Authority, which they were in, it was nothing more than just edgy. It was a bunch of Justice League and Avengers analogs with a bunch of edgelord shit in it. Somebody says, what about Squirrel Girl? I used to actually like Squirrel Girl. I didn't give a shit about her for a while, but then I think it was a Dan Slott series, like miniseries on the Great Lakes Avengers was one of the first times I really saw her as interesting. But I mean, she's awful now, or at least the series she's in is awful. But yeah, Midnighter and Apollo. The Authority even had its moments under Warren Ellis, but yeah, Midnighter and Apollo is just a gay Superman Batman joke. So he says the MCU really missed an opportunity for Doctor Strange Iron Man team up movie. It's some great moments in Infinity War. Yes, they did. Those two worked well together. So the joke, of course, being it's two versions of Sherlock working together. Yeah, and actually, a Squirrel Girl series with a competent writer and artist would be cool. The plucky adventure, the misadventures of a plucky D-list superhero. I could see a Squirrel Girl movie with Anna Kendrick playing her. That would be fantastic. But the Squirrel Girl series, where everyone's drawn like they had fucking Down syndrome. Tom Bombadil says Ragnarok was low-key Guardians of the Galaxy sequel. I guess. By that point in the MCU, the movies would blur together a lot, which is kind of cool. I sort of like that. The initial sequels right after Avengers sort of had the problem where they weren't quite ready to have guest stars. I mean, Captain America 3 also functions as Iron Man 4 and Avengers 3. It's definitely mostly a Captain America story, but it's also heavily an Iron Man story, heavily an Avengers story. But yeah, like I said, not a lot of characters I would think are terrible, but so it says the MCU is a cool concept for the 11 years it lasted. Yeah, it was impressive, frankly. It was a big risk. Yeah, superhero comic or movies were around, but they were just sort of a thing, and then or just sort of this kind of bit of a minor thing, really. And they were like, let's. It's funny. Sony had the opportunity to buy the rights to almost everything. It was something like I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like again, I don't have the exact numbers, but it was something like if it was like a $10 million to get the rights to Spider-Man, for another $2 million, they could have gotten the rights to Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Black Panther, all the rest of these. And they were like, fuck you. Nobody cares about those. Just give us Spider-Man. You got to remember, it was the 90s. I mean, Spider-Man and X-Men were the only real things Marvel had that were well known outside of comic book fans. And a little bit the Hulk, because there was still the kind of momentum from the 70s show, but so he says now the MCU will be that thing that happened that its flaws will become apparent later and nitpicked to death. And we'll see how well it ages. We'll see how well these movies age. Sometimes I'm surprised by how well stuff ages. I think the Michael Keaton Batman movie, I don't think any superhero movie has aged as well as that one. I consider it better than any of the Nolan movies. No, the Nolan movies I think are aging incredibly poorly, in my humble opinion. I like them less and less each time I see them. So he says Iron Man 1 is pretty awesome. Iron Man 1's fantastic. Captain America 1 is fantastic. In fact, all three of the Captain America movies are fantastic, especially 1 and 2. Iron Man sequel's not so good. If I had to pick the best, it would probably be Iron Man, first Captain America, first Iron Man, and first Avengers. Right. Doctor Strange is really good too. The first Doctor Strange is fantastic. It's basically, it's the way I love the way they write it. It's basically the story of if the character Dr. House got, found spiritual redemption and in the process became a wizard. So he says they killed all the villains way too soon. That's a problem a lot of superhero movies did. But it became very apparent. The MCU has this rep for not having good villains. I think that's a bit overblown, but there's definitely something to that. I think Ultron was a solid villain, and James Spader's performance was good in it. Red Skull was pretty bitchin'. Thanos is good. But yeah, there's a lot of forgettable stuff and all that. So he says Black Panther 2 is going to be super woke. Probably. Loki's a decent villain. But he's almost barely a villain. Red Skull, though, was Hugo Weaving's Red Skull was fantastic. That's another thing that really elevates the Captain America movie. I love that line. He was like, Captain America, I'm a big fan of your films. But it's certainly better than the DC movies. The DC cinematic universe, what do you got? Like Wonder Woman and then a whole bunch of shit. Probably gonna wrap this up then.
Captain America! How exciting! I'm a great fan of your films.
Yeah, the Captain America movie's bitching. Somebody says Aquaman was good, Shazam was good. I forgot about those. I haven't seen those yet. I've been meaning to. They do both look good. It's almost a shame, though, for a good movie to even be in the DC cinematic universe at this point, because it's so botched beyond repair that even doing a good movie in them is almost wasted. All right. Well, like I said, folks, if you enjoy the content I put out, do consider supporting the show. We got the PayPal, Patreon, and Amazon wish list. Somebody says the Captain America movie is done by the director of The Rocketeer. I don't know if that's true off the top of my head. I'm too lazy to look it up. But now that you say that, I sort of see it. I sort of see a similar feel there. Rocketeer's a good movie too, by the way. If you've never seen it, check it out. Very underrated. Alrighty. Like I said, that's all we got for today. I want to thank you all for listening. Bechtloff out.